Welcome back to Politico's AI Summit. And I'm pleased to introduce our next session, which is about Britain's approach to AI and plans for international cooperation after their departure from the EU. And with that, I will hand over the floor to our chief technology correspondent, Mark Scott, who's calling in from London.
Thank you, Nick. With me this morning, we have John Whittingdale, the Minister of State for Media and Data. Good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. Fine, thank you.
Wonderful. So let's kick off. This whole summit is about the way AI is going to be ruled and regulated going forward. We have, at least within the EU, plans for the first quarter of next year to bring out some very specific AI rules to see how this is going to play out. Right now, the UK is not taking that approach. There are no specific AI rules on the books, nor is there an AI regulator plan going forward. What is the UK's specific view on how AI should be regulated, and is there a need for specific AI rules to do that?
Well, I think the events of the last 6 months have demonstrated the importance that digital technology and AI in particular can play. The COVID crisis has accelerated adoption of these technologies, and obviously we are looking to create our own framework in the UK. We are very keen that the UK should be a centre of excellence for digital technology and specifically for AI, and that's something which we have been working on for some time. We will be producing a digital strategy on behalf of the government later this year, and we also very recently published the National Data Strategy. And we are examining things like the way in which digital markets are working and what additional measures that can be taken in terms of online harm. So there's a lot of work going on in this area. It is important that AI is developed in a framework which encourages growth, which encourages innovation, but at the same time, trust is very important, and that requires us to have an ethical framework for data use and to have clear protections of things like privacy and civil liberties. So, it is not to say that we haven't been thinking about this. We are thinking about it very carefully, and we will be developing our own framework and obviously working with the EU and others in this field. We're very pleased to be part of the global partnership on AI. So I think a lot of countries are all thinking about how best to promote AI, but at the same time put in place those protections.
There's one thing to have a framework, but there's another thing to have specific rules and regulations. Is the plan for the UK to have legally binding rules for AI, or just keep more regulatory, a sort of a voluntary framework system?
Well, we're very keen, on the one hand, not to do anything to impede the development. We want to encourage growth, and you don't want to stifle that. But as I say, there do need to be protections, and we have bodies like the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation who are advising us on that, and a lot of thought will be given. Now, I think there will need to be a framework, certainly, but the extent to which one produces detailed rules is something that we're still looking at and obviously discussing with a lot of other countries.
When you look around the globe, there is a push to get their heads around AI. The European Union obviously are pushing ahead. The US and China, both from the amount of money being spent on AI and their footprint, are also two countries that are really leading the fore. With the UK sort of months away from the end of the transition period because of Brexit, where does the UK fit if you have, frankly, three large, well-financed spheres of influence, if you will? Where does the UK fit into that scheme?
Well, I think the UK is playing a leading role in a number of the international discussions in this area. We were very involved in the development of the OECD AI principles, and we were delighted to see those put into practice. And at the same time, we are founding members of the Global Partnership on AI. And we've been working with the G20 countries in terms of the national policies to advance AI. And obviously, the UK will be assuming the presidency of the G7 at the beginning of next year. And we've also recently agreed the UK-US statement of intent on AI. So I think there will be a lot of international collaboration, and obviously every country is pushing ahead in this area. And we saw only yesterday, I think, this latest news that a AI-controlled robot had defeated the South Korean Silver Olympic curling team. So, I mean, there is a great deal of research being done, but we need to collaborate both in terms of development, but also in discussion about the rules which should govern it. And my particular area is data, where it's very important that people should have trust in data and its usage. And that requires there to be protections for privacy and for civil liberties.
On the international cooperation, I also saw last week that the UK signed an R&D AI agreement with the US. I just want to understand exactly how that fits in with the global partnership. Are they not somewhat overlapping? Is it necessary to do something specifically bilaterally with the US if you guys are already working together in the OECD process?
Well, we are working together in the OECD process and other international forum. But this was an agreement which was reached, I think, a couple of years ago between the UK government and the US. Obviously, it's taken a little bit of time to actually work out the detail of it, and we have agreed to cooperate closely. The relationship between the UK and the US is a very close one. It's a historic one. And I think that we can work together very closely. But that's not to say we aren't keen to have as much international collaboration through different bodies as possible.
You mentioned data and the trust in data. AI is frankly predicated on the need to having and being able to process data as much as possible within the right privacy restrictions. We have, as of October 1st, a couple of months to go before the end of the transition. Can you give us an update specifically on how the data transfer negotiations are going between the Brits and the Europeans in terms of keeping those, having a so-called adequacy agreement in place by the end of the year?
Well, I'm in touch with our negotiating team on a weekly basis, and I understand that the discussions are going very well. In a sense, I would have been surprised if they hadn't, because obviously the UK's data regime is based upon that drawn up in the EU. The UK adopted GDPR, and that is now being incorporated into British law as a result of our legislation as part of our departure from the EU. I don't think the EU has ever had negotiations about adequacy with a country which has been closer in terms of their own legislative protections than it has with the UK. So we can see no reason why we shouldn't get an adequacy agreement. And I'm encouraged to hear that a lot of progress has been made. We've still got obviously a few more weeks before the end of transitional period, but we're optimistic that we can achieve adequacy during that time. If something goes wrong, if it doesn't happen, then obviously, we will have contingencies. We have been talking to businesses just to advise them of the measures that they might need to put in place were it not to be achieved. But as I say, I'm very optimistic that we will get an agreement.
When I talk to UK-based AI companies, that they are slightly concerned about having and continuing to access EU data within obviously the right privacy regime. What contingencies are in place if an adequacy decision isn't able to be agreed to by the end of the year?
Well, there are alternative transfer mechanisms which are possible if there isn't an adequacy agreement, and they principally make use of standard contractual clauses. So our Information Commissioner's Office, which is the protector of data, if you like, in the UK, has been providing advice to businesses about the incorporation of those clauses to protect the transfer of data should adequacy not have been achieved. We've made it clear that we have no intention of trying to impede the flow of data from the UK to the EU. The question will be the alternative direction from the EU to the UK, but it will obviously be much simpler if adequacy has been achieved, and we are keen that it should be. But there are mechanisms which will still allow it to occur even without adequacy through the use of standard contractual clauses.
So the UK government and the ICO have been on record saying that they will allow UK data to transfer to the European side. Without looking to put words in your mouth, is this a question of the Europeans doing the same? I'm trying to figure out what actually is the yeah.
Sorry, we've said that in due course we would want to review our adequacy arrangement with the EU, as we will be doing with a lot of countries. But we have absolutely no intention to withdraw our recognition of the EU. Indeed, we've legislated to ensure that there will still be the ability of data to be transferred from the UK to the EU. And I would very much hope that the EU would adopt the same attitude. But obviously the best way we can do that is by having an adequacy agreement. And given the closeness of our existing regime to the EU, we built it on the basis of the EU's regime. I can see no reason why we shouldn't achieve adequacy recognition in the talks. And obviously the EU looks for reassurance in certain areas, and that's been the discussion. But so far, I don't believe there has been any significant obstacle encountered, and I hope that we will achieve an agreement within the time remaining.
Are there reassurances related to potentially how the UK national security agencies are using data, like the Europeans have had questions around the US?
Yeah, that obviously is one of the areas where they have been asking us questions, but we do have the law enforcement directive and the arrangements in that case. If they seek further reassurances, that's obviously something we will be happy to discuss with them. But as I say, our existing regime is based upon the EU and is regarded by the EU as compliant with EU legislation. And so I can't see any reason why that they should suddenly take a different view at the end of a transition period.
With the time we have left, just following up on that, the idea of Brexit was to allow the UK to go its own path on regulation and rules and sort of set its own agenda in a variety of different areas. Data and the access to data is crucial for the 21st century digital economy. And there are many within the UK who might want to see the Brits go maybe a different path to sort of segue away from GDPR and allow a different regime in place. Do you see data protection and data as a way or an area in which the UK will look to go its own path?
Well, look, we see huge opportunities for the economy generally and technology sector of making better use of data. We're very keen to achieve that within government and across the economy, and that's the major part of the National Data Strategy, which we published in September and which we are consulting on. Now, the requirements of adequacy, and as I've said, I hope we will still have adequacy, will require us to provide the protections which the EU expect. Now, we would want to continue to do that, but there is some flexibility in how you achieve that, and so within the umbrella of data adequacy recognition, we could certainly look at ways in which we could facilitate the better use of data. We're looking at how the ICO operates, and we're looking to encourage sharing of data at the same time as increasing those protections. So, I think the two are not in conflict. I think we are certainly looking to try and create a pro-growth, pro-innovation regime, but we are not intending to do anything which is going to be a departure, a wild departure from the EU's requirements, which would put at risk adequacy, which if we have achieved it.
So GDPR is still going to be the law of the land come January 1st onwards?
Law of the land. It was transposed into UK law as part of the EU Withdrawal Act. But as I say, we will look at trying to create as a framework to encourage innovation and growth within the scope of the rules which we have put in place.
Wonderful. Well, John, I'm being told I think we're out of time, so I have to say thank you so much for taking your time this morning to talk to us about the UK's position on AI and data going forward post-Brexit. And with that, I think I'm going to hand over back to Nick.
Thanks, yeah, and I want to invite you back. The next session is at 11:05 with Politico's intelligence analyst, Cornelius Hirsch, who's going to share some key data insights about AI in Europe. Looking forward to seeing you then, and back here at 11:05. Thanks.